Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating mission today.
We really do.
Yeah, we're going to explore exactly how highly regulated industries, like the pharmaceutical sector, are managing to survive the just relentless pace of modern software updates.
Right. Without completely drowning in an ocean of compliance paperwork, which is a real risk.
Exactly. And to guide us, we're pulling from this February 2026 article written by Omer Simon.
He's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Validfor, right?
Yep, that's him. And his piece is titled Continuous Validation in the Cloud Era, SaaS Updates. So, to kick things off, I want you, the listener, to imagine just for a second that you are a quality assurance manager in pharma.
Oh, that is a high-stress job. I mean,
Yeah.
people's health, their actual lives depend on your company getting things exactly right every single time.
Every single time. So to keep up with the times, your company decides to migrate its digital operations to the cloud, which, makes total sense.
Right. You get massive scalability, global access, and you're significantly lowering your physical infrastructure costs.
It looks amazing on paper, but then reality hits, and it brings this nightmare that is literally keeping QA managers awake at night.
It's the ultimate double-edged sword, really. You get the incredible speed of the cloud, but you inherit what we call the update cycle.
The update cycle, right.
Yeah, and this source material is so critical right now because it captures this massive transitional moment. To really get why this is a nightmare for a QA manager, we have to look at the baseline of how things used to be.
Okay, so like the old on-premise world.
Exactly. Companies used to have absolute control. If you bought a huge enterprise software system, it lived on physical servers in your basement.
Right, you own the hardware.
You completely control the environment. You decided exactly when or even if you upgraded the system. You could test a new version for 6 months in a sandbox before rolling it out.
But in the software as a service era, the SaaS era, you don't own the server at all. You're basically just renting the software.
Yeah, and those SaaS vendors are pushing updates weekly, sometimes even monthly. They're constantly tweaking the code on their end.
So to put this in perspective for you listening, it's like trying to rigorously inspect and certify every single brick in a house. You're meticulously checking the mortar, the safety.
Right, doing a full inspection.
Yeah, but the house is actively being renovated by someone else while you're standing inside it. The walls are literally moving.
That visual hits the nail on the head perfectly. The ground beneath these regulated companies is just constantly shifting.
It's wild.
The core conflict really boils down to two opposing forces, speed versus control. The cloud inherently wants to move fast, to innovate, to patch security flaws the exact second they're found.
But highly regulated industries, they demand absolute control and predictability. They need meticulous documentation of every single variable.
Exactly. And the old tools these companies use to maintain that control are just fundamentally breaking down under the pressure of cloud speeds.
Okay, let's unpack this, because my immediate reaction, and I'm sure what you listening are thinking right now too, is if the old methods were so fantastic for safety, why don't they just force the SaaS vendors to slow down?
Right, like just hit the brakes.
Yeah, I mean, a pharma giant has massive purchasing power. Why not just say, hey, stop updating so often, give us a static version, or we walk?
What's fascinating here is that fighting the cloud is ultimately a losing battle. You just can't ask the tide to stop coming in.
Why not, though?
Well, SaaS vendors operate on a multi-tenant model. Everyone is using the exact same underlying software. They have to update to push critical security patches that protect against new cyber threats.
Ah, so if you don't update, you're vulnerable.
Precisely. They fix system-breaking bugs and offer competitive new features. If you force a vendor to isolate you on an old version, you become a massive security risk.
You're just asking for a less secure, degrading product.
Right. So Omer Simon argues in the article that to survive, organizations have to fundamentally shift their entire operational mindset.
They have to move away from what he calls periodic validation, right? Where you check a static system maybe once a year.
Exactly. And they need to embrace what he calls continuous validation.
Continuous validation, meaning the validation process is just always running. It's always adapting to those shifting walls of the house we're standing in.
You've got it. But we should probably talk about how they actually did this in the past to understand why it fails now.
Yeah, the source material mentions the V model. What actually is that mechanism?
So the V model has been the gold standard in traditional software validation for decades. Imagine a literal letter V.
Okay, picturing a V.
The left downward slope represents the planning and design phase. You start broad, like what do we need this software to do? and you meticulously document your way down to the tiny functional requirements.
Down to the absolute bottom of the V.
Right, at the bottom point, you actually write the code or configure the system. Then the right upward slope of the V is the testing phase.
So you're climbing back up.
Yeah, for every single requirement you documented on the way down, you have to create a specific test on the way up to prove it works exactly as designed.
Wow. So it is incredibly rigid, sequential, and just highly structured.
Very rigid. And for a static system, that server in your basement that never changes, it's fantastic. It's undeniably thorough.
But the cloud is wildly dynamic.
Right. If a pharma QA team tries to apply that rigid V model to a modern SaaS environment, if they try to go all the way down and back up for every minor weekly patch,
the system physically breaks down. I mean, the team would just drown in an impossible mountain of paperwork.
totally. They'd start validating a January update, and by the time they finish in March, the vendor has pushed 12 more updates.
Which means you are always behind and effectively always out of compliance.
Exactly.
So if continuous validation is the required mindset to fix this, how does a team actually execute it without getting completely overwhelmed?
It's a great question.
Because we know we can't stop the updates and we can't use that massive V model for every little change. Where do you even start?
You start with triage. You have to figure out what actually needs your attention.
Okay, so prioritizing.
Right. The fundamental truth of continuous validation, and the first major shift Simon outlines, is adopting a risk-based approach. Because, well, not all software updates are created equal.
To carry our house analogy forward, it's the difference between the contractor painting the front door versus tearing out a load-bearing wall.
That is a brilliant way to frame it.
Right, like a cosmetic change to the user interface, maybe a menu button changing from blue to green. It isn't a structural risk to the underlying patient database.
Exactly. You don't need to call in a structural engineer to approve a paint job.
Under the old V model mentality, though, because everything was batched into one massive annual update, companies treated the paint job and the load-bearing wall with the exact same level of testing.
Which is crazy. In a SaaS environment, you simply cannot afford to do that. You have to intercept the changes at the source.
So how do you do that practically?
The mechanism involves analyzing the vendor's release notes for every single update before it hits your live environment. You have to apply human critical thinking.
You actively evaluate what specific business workflows are actually impacted by this specific code change.
Yes. Where is the real risk to data integrity or, patient safety?
Okay, so let's say you've done the triage. You looked at the notes and decided this week's update is just a paint job.
Okay.
How do you legally prove to a government auditor, maybe 2 years from now, that you didn't just guess?
Documentation.
Right. If the walls are constantly moving, how do you track the history of the house? Because the article is very blunt about this. Managing these updates via email chains or manual spreadsheets is a recipe for disaster.
Is a profound recipe for disaster. Just think about the physical mechanism of a spreadsheet being used by a global team.
Oh, it sounds messy already.
If you have dozens of critical SaaS apps updating weekly and your QA team is spread across 3 continents, how do you track that?
You really can't.
Right. If someone in London updates a cell to say risk mitigated on an Excel file and emails it to Tokyo, but Tokyo is looking at a local file called validation tracking V4 final. Really final.
Oh man, I've seen that file name before. Version control instantly vaporizes.
It does. Things slip through the cracks. 2 people might test the exact same thing simultaneously, or worse, nobody tests a critical update because both assumed the other had the right spreadsheet.
So if a government auditor walks in and says, hey, show me exactly who approved the update on November 14th, and you hand them a printed out email chain and a thumb drive with 12 Excel files.
They are going to shut you down immediately.
Wow, they absolutely will.
That brings us to the necessity of automated change control. You must ditch the static spreadsheets for a centralized digital change management system.
Okay, so every single vendor update is automatically logged into this one digital environment.
Exactly. The human risk assessment is typed directly into it, the approval workflow happens sequentially within the software, and the whole history is tracked in real time.
The word that keeps jumping out at me in this section of the source material is traceability.
Yes, traceability is the magic word in any regulated industry. It is never enough to simply make a good decision about an update.
You have to legally permanently prove it.
Right, you have to prove you made a good decision based on the available data at that exact second.
So every decision to accept an update without testing or to mitigate a risk by running a test Must be digitally documented.
Documented, time-stamped, and traceable to a specific human user. This centralized approach ensures your critical thinking is captured.
Which saves massive amounts of time and provides a bulletproof permit history of the house for the auditors.
Exactly.
Okay, I am tracking with you. We've logged the changes digitally. We've used our critical thinking and risk triage to decide that, yes, this specific update is touching a load-bearing wall.
So it actually needs rigorous testing.
Right. But now we hit a very real, practical hurdle, the clock. How do you physically test the software fast enough before the next update rolls out?
This is where the sheer speed of the cloud really forces the issue, particularly with what the industry calls the Friday update dilemma.
Oh, man. Just hearing the phrase Friday update dilemma gives me a stress headache.
I know, right?
Paint us a picture of what that actually looks like on the ground.
Okay, imagine it's 4:00 p.m. on a Friday. Your core SaaS vendor, the one that runs your entire laboratory data management system, pushes a major required update.
So everyone's papping up for the weekend and boom, update.
Yep. And you, as the QA manager, need absolute mathematical certainty by Monday morning at 8:00 a.m. that all your critical workflows still function perfectly.
Because hundreds of scientists are going to log in.
Exactly. Under the old V-model methods, human beings would have to give up their weekend, sit at their computers, pull up thick binders of testing scripts, and manually click through thousands of screens.
Just entering dummy data to verify the system hasn't broken.
Right. Which could take days or even weeks. Days you simply do not have before Monday morning.
So manual testing simply cannot keep up with cloud velocity.
It can't. So the strategy shifts to leveraging automated regression testing. Instead of humans clicking buttons, you use automated test management software.
You basically build digital bots.
Pretty much. These bots are programmed to know exactly how your system should behave. When that Friday update hits, you unleash the bots,
And they run these massive, highly complex automated regression suites.
simulating thousands of user logins, entering dummy patient data, clicking save, and verifying the database entry, all in minutes rather than days.
I love the idea of sending a swarm of drone inspectors through our renovated house in 60 seconds to make sure the roof isn't caving in.
It's a great image.
But wait, I have to push back here.
Sure.
If a machine is just testing another machine, aren't we basically just inheriting the software vendor's bugs, but doing it faster? How does the automated drone actually know what a human QA manager cares about?
That is a crucial distinction. The automated testing software isn't just blindly exploring. It is testing against your validated baseline.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
During the initial setup, humans define the exact parameters of success. They said, when I enter a blood pressure of 120/80 and click Save, the database must reflect exactly that number in this specific cell.
Got it. So the bot is simply executing that human-defined rule thousands of times faster than a human could.
Exactly. It confirms that the shiny new update from the vendor on Friday hasn't accidentally severed a critical wire that you rely on for compliance.
Okay, that makes total sense for the immediate, short-term panic of a weekend update. The drones make sure the lights turn on Monday morning.
Right.
But the article also talks about the long game. Because even with automated testing and digital change logs, continuous validation isn't just about surviving the weekend.
No, it's an ongoing life cycle.
It really is.
This touches on one of the most hidden, insidious dangers in cloud software, which is system drift.
System drift.
Yeah, even if you are diligently tracking every single change and your bots are successfully testing every Friday update, minor changes have a cumulative compounding effect over time.
Like a small update to a drop-down menu here, a minor patch to a reporting format there.
Exactly. Over a year, those hundreds of tiny changes can cause the system to subtly, almost invisibly, drift away from its intended, originally validated use.
So what does this all mean? If we are automating all this testing, and we are meticulously logging everything in digital systems, are we basically just putting compliance on autopilot and walking away?
Like just letting the machines handle the machines while we go get coffee?
Yeah, exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the answer is a resounding no. Human oversight is still absolutely vital.
Okay, good to know.
And that is exactly why the source material emphasizes periodic review management as the final, non-negotiable pillar here.
Because system drift doesn't usually announce itself with a massive crash.
Right. Let's go back to the house. Let's say 1 week, the contractor moves a light switch 1 inch to the left.
Barely noticeable.
The next week, they widen a doorway by ½ inch. The week after, they change the slope of the hallway floor by 1 degree.
None of these things trigger an alarm for your drone inspectors. The lights still turn on, the door's still open.
But 6 months down the line, you wake up and realize your 3-bedroom house is suddenly a 2-bedroom house with a really weird slanted hallway that you never actually asked for.
Wow, the user experience has completely mutated.
And that is the danger. The system still technically works, but it is no longer the system you actually validated for your specific business needs.
So that's why automated, scheduled periodic reviews are required, like forcing a full audit every quarter.
Exactly. You have to force a moment where human beings step back, look at the aggregate changes of the last 3 months, review the overarching blueprint of the house, and certify with human critical thinking that the system as a whole remains in control.
And compliant with your original goals. You really need that macro perspective to balance the micromanagement of the daily updates.
You absolutely do.
This has been an incredibly eye-opening look into a highly technical world that, most of us never see, but that quietly impacts the safety and efficacy of the medicines and products we all rely on.
It really does impact everyone.
To synthesize the core message from Validfor and Omer Seaman, the fear of uncontrolled updates is entirely valid, but it should not stop any regulated organization from leveraging modern SaaS tools.
The cloud is the future, full stop.
Exactly.
The ultimate takeaway is that by shifting your operational mindset to continuous validation and aggressively utilizing the right digital tools, you completely flip the script.
Things like centralized change management, traceability logs, and automated test bots.
Yes. You take what used to be a massive, paralyzing compliance risk, and you turn it into a competitive advantage.
Your digital transformation doesn't have to be slowed down by compliance gaps. You can actually move at the speed of the cloud while staying completely safe.
It's all about adaptation.
And I think it's crucial to point out that even if you, listening right now, aren't a quality assurance manager in a pharmaceutical company, the underlying philosophy here applies to absolutely anyone managing a tech stack today.
Oh, without a doubt.
If you've ever had your phone update overnight, only to wake up and find your alarm app completely changed its interface and you missed a meeting.
We've all been there.
Right. Now multiply that panic by $1 billion in strict FDA regulations. That's what we were talking about.
The stakes are incredibly high.
Moving away from periodic panic whenever a system changes, and moving toward a mindset of continuous management and risk triage that is just a crucial survival skill for the modern digital world.
It really is about building fundamental resilience into your processes, knowing that the environment around those processes will never, ever stop changing.
Well said. But before we wrap up this deep dive, there is one final, incredibly provocative detail from the source material that I want to leave you with to mull over.
Oh, this is a really interesting point.
Yeah, while we've spent this time talking about software updates and validation platforms, the Validfor website heavily features menus for things like Validfor AI, LLM usage policy, and responsible use of AI.
They also have entire sections dedicated to foundational pharmaceutical rules, specifically something called the LCOA principles.
Right. To give that some necessary context, the LCOA principles are the absolute bedrock of data integrity in the pharma world.
It's an acronym, right?
Yep. It dictates that all data must be attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, and accurate.
Let's actually dig into 2 of those words, because they are massive hurdles in the cloud.
Attributable means you must be able to prove exactly which specific human being created or altered a piece of data.
And contemporaneous means the data must be recorded at the exact millisecond the action took place, not written down from memory 10 minutes later.
Achieving that level of strict, time-stamped human accountability in a fast-moving cloud environment is already incredibly difficult.
It requires immense digital discipline.
So combine those 2 concepts in your mind, the strict, unyielding rules of LCOA and the explosive rise of artificial intelligence.
Here we go.
Here's the thought I want to leave you with today. Right now, we have been talking about human vendors at a software company pushing SaaS updates weekly or monthly, and human QA teams using automated drone tools to continuously validate them.
Right.
But as SaaS vendors inevitably start using AI to write and push their own updates at speeds far faster than weekly, perhaps even dynamically, where the AI is customizing and rewriting the software's code in real time based on how a user is interacting with it.
How in the world will continuous validation keep up with that?
Exactly. This raises an incredibly important, almost philosophical question for the industry.
If an artificial intelligence is rewriting system code on the fly to optimize a workflow, how does that change attributable under the LCOA principles?
Who legally made the change? Was it the original programmer?
The AI model itself.
Or the user who prompted it? Will we eventually reach a point where human critical thinking simply isn't fast enough to triage the risk of real-time AI updates?
Will we need to build entirely separate AI systems that are solely dedicated to reading the microscopic release notes generated by the vendor's AI
Look,
systems?
in the end, does our house renovation metaphor break down completely? Because
Yeah.
the house is actively rebuilding itself at light speed, and we just have to trust the machine to validate the machine.
It is a wild, slightly terrifying frontier.
It really is. Something to think about the next time you see that little notification popping up telling you it's time to restart your device for an update. Until next time, keep exploring.